city operations. Also attached to that is a fleet inventory, so it's going to be a very detailed fleet inventory. I know the mayor had already worked on some and had some of the departments get some of the information. So we'll see if that's applicable to exactly meet those kind of criteria. If so, it saves us some time, but that essentially just to get an idea of what kind of vehicle, how many vehicles we have, what the level of pollution that each vehicle would, based on type, would emit. There's different classifications through the state. Some we're not going to be able to eliminate, that DPW or MLD, larger machines that have to be used. And then once with that inventory, there'll be a fleet efficiency policy. So it's taking that information, once again, very similar to the action plan, is what can we do to, reduce the fleet or upgrade to electric vehicles or more appropriate and environmentally friendly options. So currently right now, when you receive the state funding, state agency, they have a little bit of backlog because they deal with all the different grant awardees. What they're going to do is send a contract that will be signed by the mayor and the council will approve and the mayor will sign. What essentially that will do is allow us to go out and attract a consultant to help do a lot of the work, and so they'll facilitate a lot of breaking down the data and collecting and doing a lot of some of the work that we will assist with as well. So I have not heard back from DEC regarding that, but as soon as I do, I can email out to everyone about what those timelines are. So that's it for the update on the grant. We have the 3 environmental policies that the council did pass in December. So there was the green procurement policy, there was a recycling policy, as well as, what was the last one? Anti-idling policy. So what's going to happen is CAF is going to be adding that to the employee handbook. So that's something that was sent out to all the departments and most likely was sent to all the other managers as well. And so that, especially with the anti-idling, it's going to be, that one specifically will be more for the departments that utilize city vehicles, and then be general guidelines, make sure the anti-idle. The recycling policy is trying to set up time with DPW for setting up recycling at all the different offices, and then also for them to create a central location. Let's say in City Hall, every office would have recycling. We would then, each office or however it would work out with DPW would set it in a central location. DPW would take that away once a month or whatever frequency we need. And also, so that will accomplish some of the goals, and as well as just making City Hall and the other government buildings.
And they're up here if you want to put that, press F5. The 3 policies actually are described right here.
Here?
Just press the F5 key probably. Yep. And if we scroll down.
Do you want me to use your imager?
Hmm?
Do you want to?
Ethan, do you want to?
Do you want to use your mouse that?
If it works over here, sure.
Well, I meant you have the other one.
Oh, the clicker thing? Oh, yeah.
The clicker, eyes and stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, just plug the bottom part in, and then I'll keep the bottom.
And another component of that recycling policy, as you can see up here, is about special events. And essentially for any city special event, so if someone wants to host an event on Trinity Park or or at the city beach or somewhere, that they have to incorporate recycling as part of their waste management. So essentially working with Sylvia and going to update the applications to include certain components as having that recycling coordinator who's responsible for coordinating with the city and DPW, because we have these, as you saw in some parts of City Hall, you have these larger blue bins that Rochelle was able to use for the holiday parade. And what will happen is, part of those events, they'll request, depending on the size, and then they'll coordinate with the city, pick up a couple, manage that, make sure that there's recycling at all city-sponsored events. So that's something that will be implemented as well. And then that's the green
This is
procurement.
actually a big long one, just the first page there. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
have
so
all
this
the
one
pages.
is just in general, when we talked about that procurement policy, I know we looked at it a bunch of different examples. That was the consolidation of all the comments that we've had as a group and then comparing it to some of the examples that we did see. So we have that, so now there's a green procurement policy, like I said, that'll be attached to that employee handbook. And that will set some guidelines to how city operations will operate. So when it's in the employee handbook, managers, one of the things is, when we go out for an RFP or you're looking at something, is to try to incorporate, is a recycled material, is a recycled material make more sense? I know, Joel, you had made a comment about the lifespan cost, just because if it's new, if the long-term cost of disposing it might not equate to recycled.
Right.
So that was something like that was incorporated
Okay.
in for
Very good.
for people to consider and departments to consider as they go out for services or products. So there's some guidelines in there. It's obviously, as the mayor said, it's very wordy, but perhaps maybe something that we could do is make it a little bit more, like more of a pamphlet version for the departments, where it's a little bit more graphic focused. If that'd be easier for someone, or it's just a matter of referencing the actual document. And then the anti-idling policy, which will be sent out, Beth will be sending out to all the department heads to pass on forward to relevant staff that use city vehicles, which is essentially just trying to avoid idling as much as possible because of the reported and known environmental impacts. So we had talked about, I know as a group, and Rochelle talked a lot about, is if we could do a environmental impact, like the anti-idling citywide. The problem is the way she sees that is it'd be much more of a county, it should be more of a county-driven decision instead of just focusing specifically on the city, because there's so much interaction between the county and the city, from county residents who come in to work and all that. So she one of her ideas, and I'm sure at the next meeting she'll reiterate that, is reaching out to the county and seeing what their interest level or ability to do something along those lines would be.
Is there enforcement on it?
If
If you go for a countywide, even a citywide, city-owned, you can enforce that as an employer.
yeah,
Going on, as residents of the city, a policy like that, is there an enforcement side?
and that's why in
Or
this
is it
sense,
just an awareness and your own goodwill is the enforcement?
that's why we originally, because of that, we talked about if it was more of a county-led initiative and they could speak more to how it's gonna be enforced, or if you said it's just more of an awareness. I guess it depends on how we want, also, if us as this organization, or the county, or the city as a whole wants to just do an awareness anti-idling policy.
Well, it's certainly just starting the conversation. It's
I
30
moved here
million
from,
tons.
I moved here from a place that I've seen it 68 below, and in that city they had an anti-idling policy.
Okay.
And it was an ordinance, so it was enforced by the police. But you're right.
Where, what town was it?
I was in Fairbanks, in
Okay.
Alaska.
Okay.
But you're right, because people come into the city from every different direction here. It'd be harder to enforce in the city. It'd be much more sensible as a county-wide initiative.
Okay.
It'd be better to get that county-wide information, so if you live off in Sable Forks and you come into town and then you leave your car on, then how do they know if, and they get a ticket, how does that happen? So there'd be a lot of public engagement that would have to be attached to that as well.
Well, then it gets into if they're parked in a city parking spot, sure, that's enforceable, but if they're parked in CVPH parking lot, is that enforceable?
Yeah, in the county lot or something,
Right,
it'd be
it's-
tough, yeah.
But if they're
So
on a
it's something
city
we could
street
put-
parked, sure.
Yeah, we could put signs on in our property, certainly, no idling, yeah. Good point. I think you already summarized the greenhouse gas inventory slide here.
Mayor Reed, wasn't there the inventory, the data collection completed?
For the fleet inventory?
No, for the greenhouse gas.
Well, you all did through
Right.
IEP part of that,
Okay,
so that
but
data
some
is
of the
now.
data was collected.
Yeah, so that now is, we're hiring an expert with that contract to digest that data and develop policies from it.
Okay.
Is that where we're at with that? We think you have to still get approval from ESD to do that final contracting?
DEC will probably, we'll still have to wait for the work plan to sign the contract, or any work that we would have done is not reimbursable through the grant, would just be due the city's expense.
Mhm.
So the case is if we wanted to move forward, we could move forward, it's just the likelihood of reimbursement drops down considerably.
Yeah.
So,
So we've got that baseline data that
yeah,
IEP
and
had
so there'll
done
definitely
for
be
us.
something that it gets incorporated.
Okay,
So not to reduplicate efforts.
perfect.
I don't know if this was already public since our last, before or after our last meeting, but we're now been verified to be 100% renewable, and MLD is now buying any excess power they need from using the renewable energy credits, and in our case, they're buying the power from Clinton County windmills. We just received approval to do net metering in the city. We have to still develop the policies
Whoa.
for it.
That's big.
Yeah, it is big.
Oh.
So there's a standardized contract that NYSERDA has developed, so we still have to figure out the protocols for how to do that. But thank Bill Tracy for working with the PSC and with our MEIU association on that one. To be realistic, I don't think, given our incredibly low electricity rates, there really is good economics, but it's still good for the planet, so there'll probably be a few people here and there that'll do it.
I think there's a couple that are installed already,
Yeah.
here and there, there's
And I'll
two that I
probably
can think
install
of.
it, but just because I want to do it, but the economics are really hard when you're paying 4.5 cents per
Right.
kilowatt hour.
Yeah,
To
the-
talk about building
The payback time's pretty long.
Yeah.
PV installations.
You're still eligible for the federal grant is starting to peter out now. The state grant, state incentive up to $5,500 investment still remains. I think that's a 30% tax credit. And then you can depreciate 85% of the value of your system as well. So when you add up all those tax credits, as long as they stand still, and like I say, the federal ones are petering out a little bit, but it brings the cost down to about only 10% of the installation cost. But still, even 10% of a pretty large number is difficult to amortize at 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And we've got 3 or 6 level 2 charging stations spots built now, and will be another 4 that will be rolling out. I think the 2 in the county, 2 here, right here, and then 2 spots at the marina. I
Who
think.
put did the county put the ones
They
in?
put the
Okay.
county in
Well,
our,
alright, I
but
was
put
looking
in
at
our
that, I was
lot,
like,
so.
I don't remember.
I don't remember putting those in, okay.
And I think that Bill was gonna put in another 4, either in Cumberland Hotel lot, Pavone lot, or Broad Street lot, some sort of combination.
We
of those.
started right here on the other side. I think the foundation is in, but winter happened.
Okay. Well, you know they're getting used. Ours
No,
are getting
it-
used, the ones at the county are getting used. I haven't seen the marina, that's probably more seasonal.
Right on the little lot right here, the lower Court Street lot by the smoked pepper, we've
Oh.
started, but then, well, we got stopped. And then in the Glens Falls lot, I believe we're supposed to be
Yep. That's right.
coordinating that.
And Joel had just sent an update to this slide, actually. He's now, and Ethan, you weren't in the room yet, he's now exceeded the threshold of LED lights for street lamps to be eligible for the
Oh, okay,
points.
cool.
They're up to 301.
300, okay.
And in the, one of the minutes, it was like 280,
Was that to get to that percentage?
we started getting points, right?
Right, perfect. So I'll probably reach out and get all that documentation, and then we can submit
Okay.
that.
Do you need the charge out sheets or the purchase orders? Because you should have the purchase orders.
Probably then the charge out sheets.
Okay.
This is something I think that Rochelle introduced to us last meeting. Want to do something for Earth Day in the council chambers, and isn't your way? We fixed up the old council chambers to be more amenable to presentations. The idea is to have a bunch of poster boards in the lobby here, and then do some panel discussions and demonstrations and slideshows next door. We'll do a press conference at the same time, rolling out some of these developments we've been discussing today, to let the public know on Earth Day these things are occurring. And these are some of the ideas that Rochelle and Ethan had come up with for what we could present on that day.
And there's obviously so much more we could do, and then when you talk about inviting other groups like the Climate Action Coalition as well, and they wanna present information, or everyone here might have, say, hey, I wanna talk about, or present information on a certain subject, maybe the LED streetlights, as an example, of having a map printed out, so people can see that,
We can bring the heads in.
or the heads in, yeah, as an example. So we could make it as, I mean, really, right now, we're just talking about having this public event, so it's in April 22nd, I think, April 22nd's birthday, that's a Wednesday. So we still have plenty of time to first invite organizations and then also make plans and decide what we would actually talk about or present. So if there's any suggestions, or if this is something that this group wants to move forward with, you know, the climate action public event is something that we can get points for as well as providing opportunity to give some education and show some examples of what the city's doing, as well as other organizations in the area.
So if we can round up a couple of other organizations that want to participate and take 15 or 20 minutes to present their thing, have a panel discussion, encourage the campus groups that do some poster board sessions. We actually feel that it wouldn't be very difficult to put on that educational forum.
Is this where you might be able to help?
Yeah.
With Kurt's class right now, sustainability, that's legitimately what we have to do about that time, is like each group of 4 or 5 people is to present poster board on sustainability, so that kinda could work better.
Perfect time, right at the end of the semester. too.
Yeah, exactly, so that could work out really well.
Cool. So some of the other ideas to support the event is recycling campaigns, volunteer street cleanups. We often do those that time of year. There's a grant that Melena, our planner, is working on. I think maybe with MLD. I don't know who else she's working on. Is for tree planting. That DEC grant that just came out. So that might be a topic that we could work on as well. We want to be very careful. We want to obviously encourage tree planting in the city, but we need them to be the right sort of trees that aren't going to damage the infrastructure.
Or put them on the other side of the street from the wires.
So yeah, so
Small fruit trees.
Yeah, that'd be cool. There's apple trees that I can pick apples on the way home. I'll cook them in. One other idea is revisiting whether the city could do composting. Obviously, the city's had quite a history of that, but there's new technologies out there that we could consider to try to reduce our biomass and even do methane regeneration. So our John Ruff, who operates our water treatment plant, has been thinking about that with us.
That's good.
The town of Amherst has done it for years.
Mm-hmm.
They charge for the pickup and then they turn it into black dirt and sell it back to you.
That's great.
It just did.
And you know, composting has a bad name, and the city did that at one time, changed that technology, and actually the new technology, from what John told me, actually is working quite well, but already people had a bad taste in their mouth, kind of figuratively, and wouldn't really give it a chance, and technology's improved even since then. So it's at least worth revisiting to see if the economics are sound, because I think there's really no facilities like that around here. And for that matter, it could even be a revenue generator if we could take in the biomass from other areas and process it and just leave the inerts to go into the landfill, generate power and generate fertilizer at the same time. You know, everybody sort of wins. So that's kind of where we are at this point. So as always, I'm sure Rochelle and the task force can use any ideas if you think you have anything to add to the list, or things for the next agenda, things that we can work on with the campus.
I have something small. As our parking situation is going to begin to change, we should consider designated parking spaces for carpooling. That would be maybe in
That's a good idea.
ideal locations next to prominent businesses, or there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the lower Glen parking lot, maybe those closer, there's a lot of people that park there that work right in, social
Yeah.
security, so.
No, I think that's a good idea, and we've talked about a lot in our offices is how do we, we can't make, public transportation and all this just happen overnight, but something like that starts in carpooling to a degree, as well as just promoting, maybe, same thing with you have carpool spots at, like you said, key locations, and maybe that helps people when they Uber or other alternative modes instead of everyone driving down and meeting, which benefits the environment, benefits the city, and then makes a more efficient use of our space in the downtown. So I think that's a great idea. That is something and it's something we could do shortly. And so that's one of these things that when we talk about these other projects is anything small but meaningful that we could do. That's something easy, because the more little easy things that we do, instead of always talking about the big picture, then we can get to somewhere just as fast or if not faster.
Doesn't have to be just that either, there could be, a whole section of smaller parking space, I mean, obviously, we have our zoning ordinance, but
Yeah.
it could be,
Even the
a lot of
bike,
parking garages have
bike
spots
racks.
for just small
Yeah.
vehicles.
I know currently a lot of the projects are gonna be in front of the planning board this month for advisory review. There's gonna be multiple new bike racks implemented at the proposed Arts Park on both sides. I know at the Broad Street lot expansion, that's also gonna incorporate a motorcycle space and 2 compact spaces. And I know some of the design, if we wanna implement more bike racks at, let's say, all the parking lots that we have downtown as well, if that's something that we see fit, it's easy, it's metal, and we put it down and it's a bike rack, so,
Yeah, I usually just use a lamppost.
yeah.
It's probably not the best plan.
Well, I've seen, like, with the kind of a lamppost that we have, I've seen examples where people, they build onto it, and so it's like the ring
that's
around
true,
it. So
right,
instead
so-
of just randomly
Right.
leaning it, you have an actual it's designated on it, so.
Yeah, but it's
I-
true, we could use more bike racks in
Yeah.
town.
Once again, just to promote all that, alternative transportation. And I know another project the city is going to be hopefully completing this summer and moving forward with is that Saranac River Trail Phase 2.
Mm.
Which will add the 2 bridges connecting where the current NICEAG remediation site is. So you can get from the college to the downtown. So the more bike
That's
racks
great,
and
yeah.
infrastructure there, the better off we would be. So
So where the old bridge was, and then
there's
on
gonna
the
be
other side.
yeah,
behind
that's gonna
the
connect
bridge.
onto Turkey where the auction house is.
Yeah.
Mr. Baker.
Mr. Baker, yeah.
That's great.
Have you met him yet?
I have not met him. We
You
have.
get through his first 2 insults, he's okay.
Does he know? Does he know about this yet?
I
He
believe
does,
he is,
he
yeah, he
does.
is aware.
He does.
So.
Mm.
But that's something else that's exciting because it's another alternative mode of transportation that helps just other people connect to the downtown and just get around the city as a whole without
Mhm.
relying maybe necessarily on cars, so
Mhm.
a little safer too, so.
I saw a program where municipalities will try to encourage their employees to walk or bicycle to work as well. We should revisit that and put that in a
Mm.
policy and provide some sort of incentive, I don't know, like a gym membership or something, if you're
Mm.
willing to do that.
The construction of those bridges, the planning this year, construction 2020,
Construction this summer on the bridges.
really?
Bridges are prefabricated, so what they're most likely going to do is set up 2 cranes on both sides instead of going into the river and getting all the extra permits and then picking it up, setting it in. So that's to be done this summer and fall, and early fall.
By Mr. Baker, is the abutment there yet?
The abutment is not there yet, but
Okay, that's-
he is aware of all of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
alright, no, but just
Yeah.
the construction of that on by the police station, that one I think is still there.
The new one.
The new one
connecting
needs,
Jersey,
like, full
they will,
construction. Okay,
they will
okay.
have,
That's this summer.
yep.
We'll
Okay,
put you
yeah.
in charge of that, Joel, so you can deal with Mr.
No, we
Baker.
have a lot of electric down there.
Do you?
And we have a river crossing right there that if they're gonna use 2 cranes, we gotta configure that, right?
Well, I'll get Matt to reach out to you.
Who?
I'll get Matt
Very good.
to reach out to you and Bill. Talk about that.
Can you summarize, Ethan, where we're at with the points and our bronze status or whatever?
So it fluctuated a little bit, also because in January 3rd, Climate Smart Communities, they updated their list and they adjusted points slightly, and moved it around, so it's not perfectly there, but, now that, we still have the task force, that action done, coordinator action, the national regional climate program done. We're gonna be completing the greenhouse gas inventory within this year, same with the operations action plan, the fleet inventory, all that stuff should still get us well above that bronze level, which is, as of now, is 120 points. It's kind of just the arbitrary number that that community, that organization chose to get that bronze status. If I would have the rough calculations, I haven't been able to perfectly go through it all, we should be around a little over 130 by when it's all done. That doesn't include anything extra we do now. So now that includes, we talk about the street LED lights, so that could add to it. So, and all these little things that we might do, the carpool lanes, the carpool designated sections in parking lots is part of another action talks about green policies for parking lots. That's not the exact title of it, but that relates to it directly, and that's a way that we could capture some points there, as well as providing a good benefit for the community and the environment.
It's
So-
really odd that, we're only the 7th city in the entire country that is 100% electricity, sustainable sources. And the only one that also heats with electricity, so we're probably closer to zero carbon than any other city around, but there's no category for
points for
that.
that one.
Right.
No points for that, because who could imagine ever reaching that, right?
Right,
Or getting net metering in, no points for that, because who could ever manage being able to pull that off as just a city, so.
right,
There's a lot of really major things we're doing that we don't even really get credit for.
right.
Is there stuff around the bike, making the city more bike friendly?
Like lanes and that kind of thing. too.
Lanes, the racks,
Yeah.
that might even entice me to get a bike.
Yeah, there should be, I think there's some actions that involve, whether it's a part of like a complete street policy or just some new bike infrastructure to promote alternative modes of transportation, should be a way to capture points. Off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly which action that would be, but I remember reading that. And when we talk about new bike racks or other installations like that, goes along with what the Mayor was saying about employees' alternative uses of getting down to work. So I think that kind of infrastructure can play a big role, and it's just nice.
Especially as parking changes downtown,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that, if you provide better opportunities for people. If I have to lock my bike to a lamppost and my wife has a bike,
Yeah, it doesn't make
That's kind of a
sense.
pain in the neck. And
Right.
it's not all that secure actually around a lamppost, because they can still steal my tire.
That's true.
Having racks that allow better security, I think you will find more people bike downtown.
I know this summer, I think they're also, through the state's office, it's the Empire Trail. It's a connection of bike paths or designated parts of roads to connect. I can't remember the full scope, but consider a lot of miles. And Bridge Street and Route 9 in our downtown is considered, the Empire will be one of their sections, as well as the Terry Gordon bike path. So they're actually paying this summer, I believe it's this summer, to repave the Terry Gordon bike path as part of this. So that won't be for city funds. So we get a new improved bike path without touching that, as well as some new signage along Bridge Street and going through the downtown. So we will expect more bike traffic as part of eventually all this as well. So
I'm just thinking of, I'm always running downtown. I shop at the co-op a lot, and sometimes I could walk. It takes a little bit longer. I don't want to take that long, but biking is real quick.
Mhm.
But if there's not a convenient place to leave my bike, I can do it.
I'd love to see Cornelia Street be more bike friendly someday.
Oh, it's terrible.
Me too.
Because Route 9 is not bad. They've
Right.
tried to put bike lanes in there, but east-west, not very good yet.
Mhm.
And going back to the zero carbon footprint, and there's other cities that want to be zero carbon by 2040 and stuff, and they've got kind of a rough plan to do it, but it's gonna be very difficult. For us, it's not that difficult. really our only carbon footprint is from vehicles. And so we've already got a leg up on most communities and because of our electricity sourcing and our heating with electricity. And the vehicles, so, and Lawrence heard me talk about this, so we can figure out our tree inventory, our carbon sinks versus our carbon producers, look at the city fleet of vehicles across the city, see how many miles the average city resident drives, figure out how much gasoline they would use, and then figure out how many of those vehicles we have to take and put into EVs instead of gas vehicles. We could get some sort of threshold where we could actually be zero carbon with existing technologies, not pie in the sky, maybe by 2050 stuff, but maybe by 2025 kinds of stuff, you know. And it seems to be at least something we need to explore.
There was a tree inventory.
Yeah, I think they've got 8,000 or 9,000 trees, I think. Bill
Did they find
told
it?
me.
It was on a server.
Was it? Yeah.
It was in, after, I think it was 2001. I can't think of the company, but I can think of the gentleman's name that did it. They came and did every tree in the city, and when we trimmed a tree or removed a tree, we coordinated with the city engineering office and they would remove it out of the database. And that was being kept up to date.
Good.
I don't know what happened to that data.
Yeah, let's try and rebuild that and
Yeah,
see
that
where
would
we
have
are.
been useful
It might
when
be,
we
do
were
you
working
guys
on
use
the
that
original
Yeah.
stuff.
GIS. It was associated with that program.
That might be a great project. I know Lauren was coordinating stuff on the campus. That's a great campus project to work together
That
on.
would be cool.
It's got a GIS aspect to it and an environmental aspect to it. You can involve different departments.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you said there's no credit in the climate smart community point system for what you described. Who creates that system, and is there any ability to influence that system?
Yeah,
Right.
we should.
We could always ask, that's through the DEC, they set up that
Yeah,
climate smart, and I don't see why, especially if that's something that's obtainable and something that we can prove, whether or not they
Well, it's
create a whole
attainable for
category
us.
or recognize that in some fashion for us, because,
I mean, we're not the only community in this scenario, are we?
We're probably the only New York City that reached that point of being 100% energy sustainable.
Oh, so that was not exactly my question. We did that because we were able to adjust our peak buy, right? Or that extra. But even that aside, there are other communities that have municipal power companies that drive the bulk of their energy needs off of renewable
Yeah,
sources,
they could
aren't
do
there?
what we're doing.
Rouse's Point,
Yep.
it's the same thing.
Right.
So there are other communities that could reach a threshold that's pretty damn good. I mean, 100% is cool, but 95% is pretty awesome.
And almost all of them would be 95 to 97.
So that's my point. So
Yeah.
why shouldn't that be?
Yeah, let's work on NYSERDA to get some points for that and for some of the other things like net metering that we're doing. And that may be political, that may be requirements of me talking to a commissioner or something like that. I'll do whatever we need to do for that, but let's explore that. It's a very good idea. Just because they say it's not worth points doesn't mean it can't be worth points.
in their update, they update, DEC updates all the time, like I said, January
Even-
3rd, they reconfigured all that, so
If
it's
a
nothing unheard of.
If a community buys energy credits, that should be worth points.
Yeah, that's the point.
No, but in any city, whether they're electric heat or not, even if they're,
Yeah.
It's still moving the ball in the right direction.
right, and
Gotcha.
if they're gonna purchase energy credits to help, they should get points for that.
And so we can compare with all the new updates, if they added any new actions, that might encompass some of the stuff we talked about today. And then if not, we can reach out, see what the steps would be if potential to get that incorporated or some form of recognition for that effort.
Cool stuff. Any other things that are coming to your mind that we should be exploring and can work on? Well, if not, obviously we're just not being able to be here today, but it's nice to have Lauren here. So
Right,
it's
I'm
nice.
glad that I could be here. Yeah.
Thanks very much, and I'm sure Rochelle will be in contact with us. Probably makes sense to meet approximately quarterly, I would guess, unless you guys want to meet more, whatever. Ethan and I are here, so anything you wanna do is fine with us, but what do you think, Ethan? What's the best timing for your work?
Well, I think if we're moving forward and trying to do this, Earth Day event, then we probably still need to meet in the next March and then obviously April, just to make sure, whether it's designated or informally, just to make sure we're on the right track. Cause that'll be one of the things that we have to consider is part of that rough timeline that we talked about, is if we do wanna move forward, is with that, is to have a pretty good idea of what we may wanna do and what groups, whether it's the campus, climate actions coalition, or any other groups in the city, who would we wanna invite probably by the end of this month. So obviously there should be a lot of email correspondence, which I'm sure Rochelle will help with a lot with. But I would see maybe there's a reason at least meeting in the March.
Yeah, maybe end of March, and if you all can just shake your contacts about who might wanna be involved with that one. And Rochelle's gonna coordinate by email. She's not in town till April, but she feels she can do a lot by email.
To coordinate with Kurt Gerbich at Plattsburgh State, will you?
Yeah, there's a lot of planning going on for Earth Day, on campus that I could tap into. Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, the more, I mean, we involve that here, we get more people to come and more reason to, and more information to provide as well, so it's
Yeah, definitely.
And you can help out presumably too with all this on campus?
Yeah, definitely, yeah, I mean, with even getting kids to present posters or even be here, I know Kurt can make it worth credit, kids
Mhm.
will show up just to kind of create populace.
Yeah,
Great. Well, thanks
Yeah,
everybody. Thanks for
great,
coming.
thank you.
Kurt's son swims with my daughter.
Oh, really? Oh, funny.
I'll shake him up too.
Good, yeah,
corner him.
yeah. I'm actually not gonna be here that whole week, but I know there's stuff going on campus and I'm making my students attend things, so.
My
Joel.
big
Bye, thank you.
is doing the action